Hello and welcome. I'm Kamla. My guest today is Jenni Nelson, a freelance filmmaker who just graduated from Stanford University, and she has produced a film called Love Hacking. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Love
Hacking. How did you come up with that name?
Well, I guess, first of all, the story is about an American robot inventor who falls in love.
He's a robot inventor?
Well, he invents robots and he uses cell phones, like an iPhone, basically to operate his robots. So he's constantly inventing and in his free time working on different projects like this and, I don't know, figuring out different algorithms, I guess, to make these robots work.
All engineers work on algorithms. Okay.
So he's a computer programmer, and he decides that he really wants to find somebody that he can fall in love with. He wants to get married, and he finds himself on some dating websites. This is his tool to try to go about finding someone that might be a good fit for him. And he meets a girl who is from Nepal, and they fall in love over Skype and actually get engaged over Skype. And so love hacking basically is this method, I guess, that Tim has found in order to find love. And Tim actually ends up flying to Nepal to meet Sarita, his fiance, and they get married the very next day after meeting in person for the first time.
And this is a true story.
This is a true story. This is a documentary. Some people, after they see the film at film screenings or at festivals, sometimes if they're not sure that it's a documentary, they think it's fiction, but it's a documentary, so that means that it's a true story. I filmed with Tim before he left for Nepal to meet Sarita. Then I flew to Nepal and arrived there a couple days before Tim actually even arrived, so I met Sarita before he even arrived in Nepal, and then I filmed them meeting for the first time.
How did you get to know that Tim was dating, doing this online dating and using Skype?
So that's a really good question. It was kind of a process of events that transpired. I was initially researching, I was actually researching arranged marriages, but in the context of the United States.
Wait, arranged marriages?
Yes, so
I'm from India originally.
Let me give you a little bit of background. So I've spent a little bit of time working in India, and then I was working on getting my master's degree at Stanford in documentary film, and so I had a thesis project that I needed to create this documentary film. And so I had been researching various topics, and one of the topics that I was actually really interested in was this idea of arranged marriage. But there are a lot of films about arranged marriage, but most of them happen in India or the context of India. And I was familiar with that. And
how did you become familiar with arranged marriages?
I spent some time working in India. I volunteered in an orphanage there for a while, and so I don't know, just through research, through my own interest, having spent time there, so many friends from India, it was just a topic that was interesting to me, I guess, and I had become familiar with the custom. I was intrigued, exactly. And what I guess was particularly intriguing to me is that when I moved to the Bay Area, I was living in Palo Alto. This is a tech hub, and there are so many people who are from India that are living in this area. And I have a lot of friends actually that are from India, and they would, "Oh, Jenni, I'm going to be gone for a month," and then they return home and they're newlywed, and so they would come back and having had an arranged marriage and now maybe a new wife or husband, and they're living in the United States. And so I was curious, well,
were you amazed by this arranged marriage?
I wasn't amazed by it, but I was curious about the cross-cultural aspect of it. What is it like for somebody who leaves their country and is just, the experience of being married you know, a whole new experience. That has to be something, you know, as a storyteller, that has a whole story in itself. Then you're taking that and transplanting it in a new location, perhaps, that you're unfamiliar with. And so that cross-cultural exchange, and I'm an American, and so I'm, you know, interested in how that might play out, you know, here. And it's something that's happening, you know, in my local community. So I was invested, I guess, in that idea. The problem, though, was that arranged marriages happen in a certain time frame because it's all arranged, and so things, you know, are kind of being plotted out. And I wasn't finding a story, even though this is happening all the time, anything that was unfolding in the time frame that I needed for my thesis project.
This is for your school.
Yeah, so I have this film that I need to create during this particular set of time, and so I need to be filming basically in the month of December and January. Well, you know, come on, hurry up, get married when I need you to. Can't you fly to India or something? So I didn't have a story that was unfolding at the exact time that I needed, but as a documentary filmmaker, when you're researching a project, people all around you want to be very helpful. They're very curious about what it is you're working on or researching. And so one day someone said, oh, well, I know someone who's having an arranged marriage, you know, and they mentioned Tim. It was this.
That's from your own church group.
Yeah, it was this guy who I was acquainted with through my church group. And I was like, wait, let's back up for a minute. Tell me, you know, what this story is about. And so I talked with Tim, and he found out a little bit more, and he'd just gotten engaged, and he was getting married to somebody from Nepal, and it wasn't actually an arranged marriage like somebody had said, but the story was actually really intriguing to me. And so I decided that it would have some of the same cross-cultural elements that I was interested in, and it was happening right then. So I dropped everything and started working on that story.
And he agreed?
Yeah. So
Tim was okay with you intruding his space?
So I asked him about it because I'm very upfront. I think that you have to be, as a documentary filmmaker, you have to be very upfront about, you know, what your intentions are, and you know, you're walking into somebody's life, you have a camera in hand, and you're planning on filming their story, and this is a story that could end up, you know, in
one way or the other,
out in a theater somewhere, in a film festival, you know, on DVD, online, whatever. There are so many different ways, outlets for something once it's been recorded, and I wanted him to, you know, make sure if he was comfortable with it, that he understood where it could potentially go. And at the same time, I also wanted to speak with Sarita to make sure that I had her permission, because she wasn't local. I couldn't just meet with her before filming, and so I actually Skyped with Sarita and talked to her and had her ask her family and make sure that it was all okay, that
So you got clearance from all of them?
So I got permission up front from everyone. I didn't want to arrive in Nepal to film the wedding and have them think that I was just a wedding photographer, you know, shooting a wedding video, that I was there creating a documentary, and that this would potentially, you know, be on in a theater somewhere. So they understood, and they were open to it. And I asked Tim, you know, I'm like, well, why would you want me to film, or, you know, and he said, well, if there had been a documentary about it, I would have watched it, because I don't know what to do.
So here is a geek who is awkward about finding his soulmate, and uses technology, goes online and finds Sarita halfway across the world. Mm-hmm. And then very methodically, he woos and courts her, and then decides this is the person he wants to marry and settle down.
Exactly.
And so from a geek's point of view, I guess it makes sense. If he said if there was a movie about it, I would have watched it.
Yeah, I mean, he was literally trying everything that he could. I mean, he was dating not just women online. I mean, I think he was taking out a lot of, trying to meet anyone and taking people out on dates, trying to find someone who was a good fit. But in the film, you may remember that he even is trying to date people all around the world, and he's using Google Translate to communicate and speak with people in different countries. So not just somebody in Nepal, and it turns out that Sarita speaks English. She nannied for an American family, so actually her English is very good. And so, but he would have conversations with women in Brazil and anywhere. And but he is familiar with that territory. He's familiar with operating through a computer and through technology. He works in the open source world, and so he's communicating with people in different countries about, as they're trying to innovate and create different products and software. And so he feels like he can engage and have meaningful communication with people all around the world because he does it for his work all the time.
And so you will also followed him in Tech Dojo or Dojo.
Hacker Dojo.
Hacker Dojo.
The Hacker Dojo, yes. The Hacker Dojo is a local place where a lot of hackers, which that can mean a lot of different things. There are people working on all kinds of different projects. They get there to get. It's kind of like a realm for all kinds of like open source projects, or this
must have been very interesting.
It was. I think I probably actually, if I were to go back, I could probably create like hundreds of documentaries. I was so fascinated. There are so many interesting things that people are working on, and yeah, a great place for storytelling.
So now that your movie is out, Love Hacking,
mm-hmm.
what do you have in your pipeline? Because that's doing the festival circuit.
Yeah, so Love Hacking has been in the festival circuit for this past year. It's kind of wrapping up that, and now I'm moving more into the distribution phase of it. But yeah, it's had a great year in screening at various festivals all around the country, and actually even out of the United States. It won a couple of awards at a film festival in Singapore. And I was curious how it was going to screen for an international audience, and it went over really well. So anyway, the cross-cultural element seemed to really be an aspect that a lot of people could embrace.
It resonated with people. It resonated.
Yeah.
So what are you doing now?
So now I'm working on, well, I'm in the middle of a few different projects. I'm editing a film for somebody on it's on global mental health care. It's a documentary, and that film looks at stigma around people who with mental health issues, and it's looking at China, India, France, the United States, and a couple of other places globally. So that's a project that I'm currently editing. It'll be on PBS sometime during this next year. I'm also working with a couple of filmmakers locally on a film called The Revolutionary Optimists, which is another film that actually takes place in India, a documentary that follows the story of this visionary man who works with these youth in a notorious slum in Calcutta, India. And these kids are amazing. They're basically these change agents in their community. They're working to bring clean water to their community. They're trying to eradicate polio. And they're kids. They're taking on all of these projects, trying equal rights for the young girls. They've turned a garbage dump into a soccer playing field. And so that's a film that I've been assisting with. The directors are Maren Granger Monson and Nicole Newnham. And part of that, we have this new media project that's associated with the film. It's called Map Your World. And so I've been really involved with this project called Map Your World that's basically taking technology and using it for another side of storytelling, which is storytelling told through data. And so with Map Your World, the project basically is putting cell phones into the hands of young kids all around the world, and they're able to collect data on these cell phones, then upload this to an interactive website where they can then use their data for policy change to try to put pressure on governments and different agencies to be able to show to show what sort of things or changes they need in their community. So an example of this would be with the young kids in India. One of the main problems that they're facing is around trying to obtain clean water. So one of the girls who's actually in the film now with this mapping project that we're doing, she takes the cell phone and she's collecting data around all of the water taps in the slum community where she lives. So she's photographing the water taps and she's doing water surveys for each tap. And so now she has this full set of data that can show where certain areas where the water is not fit for drinking or things like that. And so they can use this to supply this data to their local community to try to get
who's
clean
funding
water.
this project? Map Your World.
So Map Your World received some funding from Tribeca New Media Fund. There's some other players that have been involved, but this was really thought up by the directors of the film, Maren Granger-Monson and Nicole Newnham.
The same people with the Optimist
film.
Revolutionary.
Yeah, so the Revolutionary Optimists. And so this is
Are
a
they
way...
funded by Ashoka by any chance? Ashoka Fellowship?
No, they're not. They had some funding from the Sundance Institute, the Fledgling Fund. There are a number of funders that have been involved in the project, and some new ones that are coming on board now.
So these two filmmakers are interested in change agents and bringing about changes at a fundamental level, using technology that's readily available, and then empowering people to, in the case of Map Your Data, Map Your Story, Map Your World, is to collect data, and then each person's data, when aggregated, kind of gives you a composite picture or a bigger picture.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's basically a story that can be told through data. So, for instance, if in this community in India, one of the boys has been taking photographs of the garbage pickup points, and where there's all of this garbage that's piling up because the people who are supposed to come and collect the garbage are not doing it. However, it is collected during the times around an election. So they can show through the data on the charts, well, if it's only being picked up during the election, then they can show this data and try to put pressure like, no, we need this, we need the trucks to come and pick it up all the time, not just during, the weeks of leading up to the election. And so the kids can really try to use this data to impact policy change in their local communities. And it's not just for, youth in India, but we're actually working with a school in Oakland, and there are kids in a classroom, in a 6th grade classroom, who've been collecting data around graffiti in a local park nearby. And so, and they're also doing one currently on...
So what is wrong with graffiti being there?
Well, they're mapping it and collecting data around it to see, if there are things that make them, as 6th graders, is there anything in the imagery that makes them feel unsafe, or that makes it, and some of it's very subjective, and they're able to talk about questions that, are related to their subjectivity, what do you feel is, offensive or not? So this is something that the facilitator of the group is working with them that their teacher's working with them on. But it can be applied to a lot of different types of situations. That group is also doing one right now that has to do with litter in the local park and cigarette
So all this is very interesting because here you are, filmmaker, storyteller. You're supposed to tell happy stories, like love hacking, how people find love. But there seems to be a social message involved here where it's become almost a two-way story because, these actors are not passive. They're actually empowered actors, and they're actually pushing the story along in some way.
Yeah, I mean, and they're they're invested because they're real people. It's their real life. This is their situation if anything's going to change, it has to come from them, and they, you know, recognize and see that, so they know that they have to be the ones to bring the change. It's not just going to happen, and you know, using storytelling to help do that. I guess as a filmmaker, I've always been interested in that part of it. Yet at the same time, you know, Love Hacking is a story that, I mean, I love humor. So the films that, Love Hacking is a film that I directed, and so that film has a lot of humor in it. There's a couple of other films that I've made that are also kind of quirky. I think there's something about that to my style. I think that employing humor in a story that you tell, it's a way that really helps people, no matter where you're coming from, you connect. Everyone can kind of connect at a level where you find something, that universal thing that you find humorous, that you can kind of laugh about. Anyone can kind of relate to this moment of, you know, awkwardness of meeting somebody for the first time, and, you know, oh, like, should I hold your hand? Oh, wait, well, what size is your hand? This happens in the film when Tim and Sarita meet for the first time. People can relate to, you know, that awkwardness of how you break that barrier.
Did you direct Tim at all? Did you direct Tim on how to act?
No.
You just had the camera on?
I don't.
Is this called cinema verite?
It's cinema verite, but I'm not a purist when it comes. I mean, I worked in fiction, so I'm not a purist when it comes to cinema verite. If, you know, if there's a shot that I want to get and it's not happening, like, let's say, here's a good example. In the very last scene in the film, you see Tim walking down the street, and he's just kind of wandering along, and I had initially I wanted to just get a shot of him walking in a street in Nepal, and so anyway, I didn't feel too bad about just saying, hey Tim, I just want to grab a shot of you walking up this street, if you don't mind. And, you know, he was open to it. But before that, he had in his head that he really wanted to take Sarita for a ride on a motorcycle, and that, you know, riding off into the sunset on a motorcycle would be a great ending for the film. and I was like, yeah, okay, yeah, sure. You know, we'll get to that when we have time. I don't know, and it's not sunset right now, whatever. You know, yeah, just we get this shot. Let me just get this shot. Well, you know, Tim, being Tim, he just, you know, when he gets something in his mind, like, I'm going to marry this woman in Nepal, he's going to do it. It's like he's unstoppable. He executes. And so when he decided, I am going to take Sarita for a ride on a motorcycle,
you had to follow.
There's nothing that's going to stop him. So this one thing of me directing him to say, could you walk up the street? That's all I wanted. And then it actually turned into this whole scene that in the middle of it, I knew that this is how I was going to end my film, because it was just like this magical thing that unfolded. I mean, he ended up, not all of it is in there, because there was like, I mean, there's so much good material that I had to leave on the cutting room floor. But, you know, he would stop at every shop, and he was asking for something, and then he started asking everyone for a motorcycle. if he could, you know, I want this. Do you have a motorcycle? Where can I find a motorcycle? And so he gets to this little shop and he asks for some popcorn, and then the next thing I know, he's asking for a motorcycle. And the thing is that he's very disarming and lovable, and these people give him a motorcycle. And
so that's how he found a motorbike.
And so he got a motorbike by just wandering from, you know,
store to store,
person to person, asking if they had a motorcycle and if he could ride it. And they don't know who he is. He's a perfect stranger. They put him on it. They don't know where he's going. They don't speak the same language as he does, but they trust him.
He must have found he must have found it fascinating.
I think everyone found it fascinating. And so he picks up Sarita on a motorcycle, and, you know, the film, I don't want to spoil the ending, but it does end with them riding on a motorcycle.
So what is your fascination with South Asia? Are you fascinated by Bollywood? I had to ask, because when you go to India and Nepal, there's a lot of Bollywood music.
You know me too well. Well, no, I'm not sure what my initial fascination with India was, other than I had done some work there. I fell in love with the people, I guess. I don't know. I mean, there's just certain things that unfold in life, and it ends up being the right
So do you have
place.
a favorite Bollywood movie?
Oh, That's a tough question because I can't really. Some of the Bollywood films that I watch them in Hindi and they don't even have English subtitles, and so I actually can't really even tell you what the title of the film is or what they're even saying.
So you just watch for the right of colors?
I just watch it. I mean, they're kind of standardized plots, so you kind of know that there's going to be like three stooges, and they're like fighting over this woman, and then somehow there's a love story.
Way of looking. Three stooges.
No, but
maybe they're singing in the rain.
No, there's a lot of physical comedy. You know, something's going to happen, and I don't know how to explain it, but it is kind of this. These really comical elements where a lot of things are going to go wrong, and then in the end, well, I guess it depends on if it's a comedy or a tragedy one, but you know, the girl ends up with the guy, or you know, so it's easy. They're plots that are easy to follow along, even if you don't understand the language. so I found myself in the local theater watching some Bollywood films a few times, and there are no English subtitles, and after a couple hours, then there's intermission. I go and eat a samosa in the lobby, then I come back in and watch the other 2 hours. They're 4 hours long. So it's dedication. It takes a lot of dedication to watch this.
Jenny, thank you for stopping by, and really it was a joy to have you, and best of luck with your future film projects. And if you happen to see an American in your local theater watching a Bollywood movie, chances are it's Jenni Nelson who is snuck in there and trying to figure out what's happening, who the Three Stooges are. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, goodbye.